Spoilerin time, folks. This week, we will be spoiling the heck out of the Larry Sanders Show, Larry's partner and broadcast nudes. Those are 2 episodes from season 2. We'll also be talking about episodes 11 and 12 of season 4 of The Good Place, Star Trek Picard, season 1, episode 1, the premiere, and the first 2 episodes of The New Pope, which could be kind of considered season 2 of The Young Pope. Depending on how you look at it, we'll talk about episodes 1 and 2 of that. I'm Tom Merritt, and of course, Brian Brushwood joining me.
Yeah, and of course, joining us, hot on the heels of his Cord Killers appearance, formerly of Word Tetris, is Meryl Barr. Thank you so much for joining us.
I am America's Meryl Barr, sir.
Oh, that's right. I gave you a much better introduction on Cord Killers. I'm like, yeah, it's Meryl.
Go watch our sister show, Cord Killers, and learn how to watch things and get the better introduction of Meryl Barr. Then come back here where we can talk about the movie draft.
Yeah. Tom.
Right.
Tom.
This is just a way to torture me, isn't it? Like, to make me think maybe I'll win so that on February 13th, the last day of box office receipts, John Teasdale will pass me.
I mean, what are you afraid of? That Playmobil surge? I mean, that movie made $1 million.
No, I mean, Frozen 2 still, kids want to see it. I don't know.
Okay, like the last few times I've come on here, I have been very adamant that Cats was going to be Tom's breakout, sort of. Tom's winning it because of
Man,
Cats.
You must be a real chump to have been publicly talking about that. He said, as the world's loudest shouter, that Cats was going to make all the money.
I gave Brian crap. And then what's funny is I find like when we started, like it was the weekend Joker came out. That was the last time I was on. And we got into a whole debate because I was like, no, Cats is going to make $250
Oh, no,
million.
I was with you. I was on your side. Nobody believed you.
I was too. It's the person who had the movie.
No. Ryan, in the initial debate, you were like, there's no way I will put a stake bet on the table that it won't make 2.5 acts. That's your exact quote.
Okay.
You came around later.
Yes,
like weeks
that is
later.
accurate.
And like, I kind of funny that it's like, you were right for all the wrong reasons. Like
Correct. I eventually became convinced of your wisdom and then realized that you were a fraud of a shaman. I reached up and I grabbed your fake beard and pulled it right off and then realized that I was left looking like a sucker. But the part that I can't believe, the most amazing surprise, is Brett Rounceville coming in 4th place.
Right,
with 85%.
And that doesn't look like it's going to change.
No,
this is it. This is the definitive. One movie doesn't work, period.
I don't know. It could have. I mean,
how could it? Then it would have.
No, because Tom has, for the winter draft, it's a pretty strong $600 million.
Even if he had 100% of Rise of Skywalker, he wouldn't have risen out of 4th.
But
that's
is
really
a
scary thing.
Flop of a Star Wars movie. If it had been The Force Awakens, then I think you would have lost by a fair margin. Yeah. So in other words, like weirdly, we have a framework where Meryl, one movie could have won, but it was just the wrong one movie. It was the wrong Star Wars.
And what happens with
then
one
what's your
movie?
excuse for Endgame then?
People
Endgame
get excited about bidding it up. If you had got Endgame at 100%, that's a different situation than getting a percentage. But since we put in the thing where you can outbid someone else by taking a smaller percentage, people get carried away, I think.
Yeah, and also Endgame was a summer blockbuster, which just tends to be different numbers. Hey, I don't want to get too in the weeds on this. I want to talk about some stuff.
I do want to point out though that right now I'm 10.2 million ahead of John Teasdale with just 3 weeks to play, and Black Christmas made me 10.4 million. So that right there is the winning movie.
Oh my gosh, you're not kidding, and it looks like you're going to drift right across the finish line. That's amazing.
Fingers crossed. All right, let's talk about The New Pope, which in my TV tracking app is listed as season 2 of The Young Pope. That's why I made that big prevarication at the beginning of the episode, because it's super confusing. And it is way more of a continuation of The Young Pope than I thought. Like he's in a coma and he can't wake up. And so they finally come to the conclusion that better than having basically no pope because he's in a coma and there's no indication that he'll ever wake up, let's just go ahead and come up with another pope, which is similar to reality in that Benedict XVI stepped down and retired. He didn't go into a coma, so he's not coming back. And we actually have two popes right now because Benedict XVI is in retirement while Pope Francis is in office.
I'm surprised that there's any case to be made that this isn't season 2 of The Young Pope. I mean, we have the same actor, a continuation of the story. We've changed the title because our protagonist is a different main character. But it's I think you're the first person that I've even heard suggest that it's not simply The Young Pope season 2 or chapter 2 or whatever.
Well, HBO calls it The New Pope,
well,
season 1.
It even opens with a previously on The Young Pope.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what? Okay, let me make the case for why they would call this a different season. Somebody somewhere pointed out, I think quite rightly, that upon seeing this, they're like, if you try to tell the public who loved The Young Pope that this is the next season, they will riot. Because The Young Pope was believable, if eccentric. It had a narrative that it was believable if eccentric. The new Pope is a fever dream of chaos. And
so I don't even know what it is yet.
This is what I wanted to ask because I haven't seen The Young Pope. So was The Young Pope all right, this is of all the things to compare this to. Did you ever see the second Dennis Leary HBO stand-up special, Lock and Load?
No.
Okay. It ends with this whole like spoken word rap that he does about he's starting the Church of Leary. And a lot of the pacing and tone of that bit is in this episode. It's in the first episode that I saw. It's so like that bit that I was like, I kind of love this? Question mark?
You know what? This is interesting because you did not see everything that came before, so you had no expectations. So as a result, you could enjoy it for the bizarre, strange thing that it is. But for me, who in general kind of loved The Young Pope, everything from the new intro to the lack of Jude Law to the wacky 1960s Batman villainesque nature of the new Pope, didn't really care for where this is headed so far.
Well, I'm not sure. I am with you, Brian, but I'm also not sure we've actually seen the show yet. Because the first episode is a weird fever dream. It took all the fever dreams from the young Pope. Because the young Pope was Jude Law is elected as Pope as a young man. What would happen if someone who's a young man became Pope and wasn't entrenched? And what would they do? And it had some weird elements, but like you said, more of a narrative. This one was like, what if we now elect a Pope who is not expecting it because of political machinations and therefore decides to be the ideal Pope? Like, how would that not work in practice? Except instead of really showing how that would not work in practice, we'll just tell it through a bunch of fever dream stuff because we're not going to stick around with that Pope because we're going to have him assassinated so that we can get to John Malkovich, who we're going to spend an entire episode getting to know in a way that basically doesn't get me to know him that much.
And you know what?
Before we get him to Rome, I feel like next week is when the show actually begins, when we see like, okay, what is this different take on the Pope? This person who is philosophical, who is not young, nor is he old, nor is he entrenched. What story are they going to tell with him?
That's the huge difference between the new Pope and the young Pope, because the young Pope starts and Jude Law is already the Pope. He starts off as the Pope. We are in media res with this, and now we are like having this first transitional episode with like no Jude Law and absolutely no John Malkovich. And then the second episode where it's like, oh, he's a sad baby. I don't know why he's so sad. With John Malkovich, I really
thought you meant the ghost of Jude Law that goes and visits everybody.
But also that was such a weird moment in the first one when the ghost of Jude Law like sits up from the bed and then he walks over to the glass.
Yeah, and he kind of smirks and he looks at the camera and winks and goes, I ain't gonna take no no Muslim heart. Like,
I have a contractual obligation to appear moving in every episode.
and also he's executive producer on the show.
and so like between all of that, we haven't even done you're right, Tom, we haven't even done the show yet. And like you watch all the trailers and the promotion for it, and it's all like, oh yeah, Jude Law is awake, and John Malkovich is also the Pope, and so it's about these two, and we're 2 hours in, and none of those things have happened yet. That's bizarre to me.
All right, I'm gonna say one more thing that I hated, and then I'm gonna explain why I think I could love it. Okay. Didn't really care for the random appearance of a new striking female character and the canonization of these 4 punk rock Vatican fugitives trying to manipulate the stuff. However, I understand why they would do that, because she does cut a striking. The 4 of them
Was
do
she
cut.
not in The Young Pope? I thought she was the same character.
She's
Is a totally different woman, I'm pretty
Poochie.
sure.
It's
Oh,
Poochie.
okay.
Yeah. No. Just Poochie shows up, and he's always been. And there's one line where they're all like, "Oh, Poochie, am I right?" And so, but here's what I think. I think that behind the scenes, maybe the director was a bit bored and says, look, I just want to do crazy dance numbers and beautiful visuals. And they're like, well, you can have that, but we got to call it something besides the young Pope. And he goes, sold, and he's off to the races, because I'll be good goddamned if there are not some really gorgeous, rich visuals, some stunning set pieces, some bizarre imagery that is stuck in my brain. So in that regard, I think I can come. I think this is a show that I will hate week after week. And once it's over with, I'll be very glad it's in my head for all of the images.
Breaking news alert, that is Cécile de France, who is Sophia Dubois in both seasons of The New Pope. That's the same woman. She just looks
It is the
very,
same
very
woman.
Poochie was always there?
She was always in
Yeah.
our heart.
I thought she was.
Nope, I have no
thought
memory
she was
of
totally
Poochie.
different. I thought it was a completely new woman.
Me too.
I thought she was. I was like, oh yeah, that's the woman, because they always had a woman in handling merchandise and all of that. I was like, oh, that's her.
I feel like
With
her
a
accent
different
was
haircut.
different. Maybe her accent.
In your defense, Brian, should you really expect yourself to remember something that happened 4 years ago?
Was
like
it
that's
4
how
years
long-
ago?
That's right.
2016. 4 years between these shows.
All right,
It
I
was a
feel better.
different decade. It was a different time.
That's right.
Also, bring
yeah.
back the All Along the Watchtower song. I'm upset.
Oh, I like the
I
new
love
one.
that.
I like the
love
song.
that remix has been around for a few years. I love that particular cover of that song.
Yeah, I have a feeling next week will be, here's what John Malkovich is like as a pope. Wait a minute, Jude Law might wake up. And then we're going to get, it's going to be another week, and then we'll finally get into the new pope. We'll have 2 popes
That's
going on.
one
but then-
third of the season.
No,
That's
okay, but
one
then-
third of it.
I know, but the next episode they have an arm wrestling contest, and then Jude Law loses, and he has to go and form Mecha Pope
No,
with 5
it's a
other
dance-off.
previous popes.
You know it's a dance-off with the nuns. Yeah. All right, let's talk about a show that, as far as I could tell, included no popes, Star Trek Picard.
I beg your
One
pardon,
admiral.
man. No popes, but one saint. That's for damn sure. Possibly.
Yeah, if I may start, what I loved about this series was it felt like Patrick Stewart. Even though he's not the producer, director, or even the writer, it just
He's a
felt like
producer.
Patrick Stewart. It felt like this is Picard old, and this is Picard of legitimately remembering data. And therefore, there's a motivated cameo for Brent Spiner, but it didn't feel like, hey, let's work Brent Spiner in. It felt like, oh no, this is what Picard would dream. And it's married to an interesting plot, which is you have this backstory of the Romulan supernova and the Picard leading the Federation to try to save it, and the Federation sort of changing and him not changing with the times, which is believable because he's an older person by that point. And that the what do they call them? The synthetics rebellion causing something that causes this woman to appear, and she's kind of the daughter of Data, and that's a mystery that I want to find out about. And it's a good reason for Picard to now head back off into space. I bought all of it. I loved all of it. The tone was right, and Patrick Stewart was amazing in it.
I never saw Nemesis. I only know by osmosis that in it, Data sacrifices themselves. And they talk in some of the behind the scenes stuff about how people thought that the father son relationship was Picard and Wesley, but really it's always been Picard and Data, and so knowing all of that, I believed that an older Picard would experience long-lasting existential pain of loss, of having lost his friend Data. I don't know whether Android 911 was in Nemesis or the Romulan stuff was in Nemesis.
No, in fact, the Romulan stuff comes from Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams movie, which explains how the Romulan in that movie comes from the primary timeline into the J.J. Abrams timeline.
Which is, okay, so all of the one, that's bizarre continuity for me, because if I remember the movie right, it's Spock is the one who's like leading the charge or something, isn't it?
He is also leading the charge, and there's no reason that there couldn't be Picard working with him. That makes perfect sense.
Okay, fair on that. Okay, little context here. I saw this as part of all the first 3 episodes at the premiere in a giant theater with a whole bunch of nerds and people who worked on the show, and the way Kurtzman framed it when he walked out on stage was the show lives in chapters, and the first chapter is basically the first 3 episodes. So we're showing you all 3 episodes tonight. Knowing that, I kind of wish that they had just made the first chapter the first episode. Like, the first episode to me kind of ends in this weird place that's not actually the end of the beginning of something. It's just something.
Oh,
and there are. Go ahead.
That's interesting, because I had, not knowing what the next 2 episodes were, I felt like this episode was weirdly 20 to 25 minutes longer than it needed to be. Like I wasn't paying attention to the time. Like, clearly I'm like, oh, they've done it. They've done the pilot thing of setting up the adventure. He's going to go try to, reconstitute Data. And oh my gosh, Data's faux daughter has been evaporated, which, by the way, was a genuine shock to me. I that was a really fun moment. But then the episode just kept going for 15 or 20 minutes.
Just trying to make sure I don't spoil anything. The way it goes forward, by the end of the 3rd episode, you realize, okay, that is the end of the beginning. That is a legit end. That's like if you set up the whole series with an hour and a half long movie, that's the first 3 episodes, basically. I don't like that they killed the android girl, and then you find out she has a twin on the Borg ship. Like, that was
looks like that from what little I saw, and don't give me any tells like Data in the opening scene, but it looked to me like, oh, she's gonna be the not so nice version. We're gonna wish she was like the other one, but she won't be.
I think you could have still killed the android girl, but had her play out longer in the show rather than rushing to her death so quickly and then motivating Picard to go back out in space.
Here's my take on what you're saying, Meryl. CBS All Access has the latitude to release these however it wants. Why not release them in chapters if they're made in chapters?
But they didn't.
Release 3 episodes week 1.
Yes.
And then release 3 episodes week 2. And
that could have worked.
Like, this is one of those situations where the brass probably are like, yeah, but if we do that, people will just subscribe and then they'll cancel. We need to string it out so we keep people subscribing for longer. But I love what Apple TV's doing, where they're like, Dickinson, get it all at once, because that makes sense. The morning show, we'll give you 3 episodes to start, and then we'll start stringing them out one by one, because that makes sense. Like, the release schedules need to adapt to how you make the content, and CBS could have done that here.
It goes back to what you guys were saying about the New Pope, where it feels like the show hasn't started yet. This is this new age thing. I was having this discussion with the guy who was at the time doing the new Tremors reboot that didn't go, and we were talking about Star Trek Discovery and what Brian Fuller's version of Star Trek Discovery was, and how Brian's version kind of had this same dynamic of it didn't start for like 3 episodes. There was a robot in the 2nd episode, that like this floating robot that just kind of would go around the show, and then the show ended up being retooled into much more of a weekly broadcast show for CBS All Access. And it's just the rules are shifting, but you still have to make an episode of television. You know what I mean?
That said, it didn't bother me at all. I unlike you two, I didn't even notice anything. I felt like the time flew by. I watched it twice. I felt like it was a nice like cliffhanger ending, like, but here's the twin. Okay, this is the synthetic that Picard's gonna have to find. I didn't feel like she was particularly evil, but certainly more competent.
She was just
because she's already in place. So
I mean, I guess they dealing with TV tropes. We know that the Romulans are trying to assassinate, or assassinated her sister. We know that here's a Romulan with crooked teeth. I get it, and he's trying to be friendly to her. But
also Picard's servants or his live-in help or whatever were
correct,
Romulan.
but they don't have crooked teeth. In this universe, like Romulans aren't universally evil, but here's a Romulan with crooked teeth, and we know Romulans are doing assassinations, so we know that this guy's gonna put on the charm and then turn out to be evil, and she's cozying up with him. So I'm getting the impression that
maybe he's just British.
Yeah, maybe. But the hey, can we acknowledge the real hero in this is whoever made the decision to have an unneutered pit bull with massive testicles prominently featured throughout the entire episode.
It's amazing. You think they would make that dog more prominent, like
Patrick
the baby
Stewart
Yoda?
claims that he was the one who pushed for that he adopted this dog. He's trying to rehabilitate pit bulls' reputations, and that's why it's in the show. I don't know if that's entirely true, but I want to believe it.
There's a writer named Zach Stentz on Twitter. He was the guy who wrote Thor and X-Men First Class, co-wrote them rather. And he said that he was in a meeting with CBS All Access, and they were all excited about Picard. And he said, "Great, but what is Picard's baby Yoda?" That's like his new question to every executive. Like, what's the baby Yoda of this franchise? And they go, "We don't really have one." He goes, "Yes, you do. It's number one." Like it's like that's your baby Yoda.
It's there. It's already
Picard.
there.
Oh no, and the dog is adorable, and the connection, and especially seeing him so fragile and alone, and having a companion, and having it be named number one, all of that. Still real curious who says no, the testicles stay in the picture. Like
what I will say about Picard, and this is my personal last word on it. This feels like a much better transitional show for the franchise than Discovery was. The goal with Discovery was we want to bring back Star Trek and bring it into the modern age, and they kind of failed. It's Star Trek fans. Some Trek fans like it, some don't. It didn't really cross over into the mainstream that much. I feel like this show will take the franchise into the mainstream, back into the mainstream, the way Discovery kind of didn't.
And I think you're right, because it's balancing this sort of like, I want more TNG with people who are like, I just don't want to live a nostalgia fest. I want something new. And it's making a shot at giving you both, which I think is so far pretty well done. The only thing that I cannot forgive is, why are the people at Starfleet Academy still wearing the uniforms from Deep Space Nine and TNG? Come on. Like, they would have changed uniforms.
I mean, they did change transport technology and phaser technology. Right? I mean, like, but also, I don't know. I'm kind of, I've not seen it yet, but apparently Red Letter Media was not kind in their review of it. But I also know that from having seen a bunch of comments from Mike over there that he's a big fan of the traditional format of Star Trek, and not a fan of injecting kung fu into it. I loved all the action set pieces. I was ready for a big old dose of nostalgia and an emotional hook to make me care. Basically, Tom, we speculated about this from the trailers, and I said, looks like they're going to set up a bunch of new people we're supposed to care about. And now here I am saying, like, so glad they've set up a new bunch of people that I'm supposed to care about.
Oh, yeah. One addendum, actually. So this is my last word. I really like having gotten to spend some time on Earth with Picard in the show. Like, we're so accustomed to, even in the movies to an extent, like Picard in space, Picard on the Enterprise, Picard in his ship. This is Picard on Earth in his little wine farm. Like, this is, and we're seeing this world. What does the Trek future look like in TV format? We've seen it in the Abrams movies, but not really on TV, and we're really seeing what the world looks like.
Last thing, that gotcha interview that rage during the gotcha interview where it's like there was one question you were not supposed to ask. Patrick Stewart really sang in his acting talents there.
Yes.
Footnote, they shot the vineyard scenes on a vineyard named Picard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Those are stunning visuals in the background.
Yeah. It's an actual vineyard. It's been called Picard for centuries. And I thought that was kind of cool that they were able to shoot there, and it looked great and all of that. All right. Let's go to the afterlife. The Good Place, episodes 11 and 12, wherein we see them finally figure out how they're going to make the afterlife work, and they get invited to go to the Good Place. And that's the end of the series. Well done. They're off to the Good Place, and that's the end. Until the next week, when we realize they're in the Good Place, and they're trying to figure out how to make the Good Place work now, because the designers have abdicated to them, and they figure it out, and they're about to just head off and let the Good Place run. And that's the end of the series, The Good Place. Until next week, when we get a 2-part season finale, which will apparently finally end The Good Place.
Can I take the lead here?
Yes.
Okay. One, have we been tricked into watching a pro-euthanasia show? That's like kind of the case they're making.
Oh, sure.
The end of the episode
is that like the end of the most recent episode we've seen is like, man, heaven's
they're
broken.
Already dead. So
yeah. Also, they're making an afterlife show where you can die in the afterlife is so. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I get it.
If there is an afterlife, then you're alive. So if you're alive in an afterlife, then I guess you could become not existent. Like that's always the problem with an afterlife.
I saw this episode a week before everyone else did. And I was waiting a whole week for everyone else to see this because the title of the series finale is When You're Ready. I have a strong suspicion, guys, the end of the series is them all deciding as a group to die, to walk into the light, and that will be the end of the show. And we are, as a people, are not prepared for it. By the way, Tom, did you appreciate that the Good Place is the Getty Center? The Getty Museum.
I can go to the afterlife anytime I want.
Yeah. So, but it's like they basically set up the premise that the afterlife will now function where you just are in it perpetually until you personally decide you've done everything you wanted to do. You feel satiated and you feel like you've accomplished your goals. And now you can walk into the unknown for real. And it's like, that's gotta be the end of the show. And the constant moral dilemma for an hour of, are we ready yet? No. Are we ready yet? No. Do we want to? No.
I actually adore the idea that, cause I was like, they can't show the Good Place. Like, how are they going to do that? How are they going to show us the Good Place? And I love what they did, which was to say, if you did get everything you wanted with no need to struggle for it, it would make you this. It would make you bored and mushy and unable to be satisfied. And I loved that idea. It's a very solid philosophical idea in the tradition of the show. And the solution of, well, then let's give you stakes. Let's give you a way out, and you don't ever have to take it if you don't want to, but it will make life more interesting in the afterlife if there is something else that you can move on to afterwards. And that's absolutely true. So I like this idea, Meryl, that we will see if and when all of our characters finally decide. So instead of flashbacks, we're going to get flash forwards to all of our characters and what they end up doing with that choice.
Yes.
I'm surprised that they didn't use, if I'm understanding it correctly, the philosophical term for it is the hedonistic treadmill. And in a show that is...
You think Chidi would have thrown that out, right?
Exactly, yeah. Right? And he would have pointed out that someone before has thought of all of this. Here is... okay. I thought that the first of these 2 episodes was a fine ending for the show. They get to go to the Good Place. The second episode was a also fine ending to the show. I was annoyed to discover that there is a 3rd and 4th of episodes that we're going to be watching. There's one way that I think I will very much love them adding 2 more episodes, which is what if releasing it back to back, just like the entire series up until this point has been a philosophical best of course. What if they make an astonishing and possibly horrific case that there's no moral case for an afterlife, and the very existence of an afterlife is torture and cruelty, and instead they end up with some kind of nihilistic ending that they agree on? That would be
that was kind of this last episode,
well,
though. But let me finish. So if what I'm hearing you say is they think they've solved it, but next week we find out they haven't.
We found out that no, even like if they make the shocking case that no, even a middle case, a middle place that goes to a good place, like it all ends up in oblivion. Let's make the case for you live your life while it's your life, and then you die. That would be shocking and amazing if they went for that, and I would find all of a sudden a purpose for those 2 additional episodes.
I will remind you. So what's the timeline thing that like it's the
Jeremy Bearimy?
Jeremy Bearimy. Remember, there's that eye with the dot in like a season or a half ago or whatever. Chidi asked, "What's the dot?" And they go, "We don't know." That has to come back.
No, it doesn't. This is the good place. That's just
it's Chekhov's eye dot. It's Chekhov's Bearimy.
I think they're gonna address like what that little dot in the eye is. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but I'm also not going to be shocked if they don't.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be surprised. I refuse to be surprised, is what I'm saying. No, I think it's a fair shot that they could use that, though. You're right.
Wait, Bryce, can we play what you have loaded right now?
Not without getting a takedown.
No, we
notice.
cannot.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we even though it's legal for us to do because we're commenting on it, it's practically not possible. Yeah. Man, copyright law. It'll always bring you down. Any other thoughts on The Good Place?
It's gonna be so sad.
I'll tell you what, man. Look, your move, Good Place. You better prove to me that these next 2 episodes are worth stapling on to the end of this. I don't know.
I hope we end up feeling like its show ended in a good place. All right, let's talk about the Larry Sanders Show. One of the things about the Larry Sanders Show is because it was capturing the gestalt of the time, it often entertains me just by who it thinks is important and who is important then and is still important and who wasn't considered important then, like Jeremy Piven, who is now more important. And this one was one of those weird coincidences where Eric Bogosian, I remember being kind of a rising star comedian. And so him being cast as Larry's, a ne'er-do-well partner was fun. But then I immediately started watching Succession, and Eric Bogosian has a part as the fake Bernie Sanders in Succession. And I was like, okay, this is just weird.
Yeah, I was really distracted by how poorly they represented somebody who has a booze problem. They just made him a jerk, I don't know. That one was a miss for me. Although Broadcast Nudes I found a bit charming in that, like, remember when Playboy was a thing, and remember when it was a big deal whether or not somebody had nudes of them or whatever.
These are both really, really interesting of their time takes, right? Because taking on Bogosian as the drunk partner who can't get his life together on its own was unusual. Like, just having that be a storyline is edgy even then, right? Like, this is back when Sam Malone, being the alcoholic who ran Cheers, was considered a very special Cheers. And so I felt like you're right. That one doesn't wear well. Broadcast Nudes, halfway through, I'm like, yeah, you would not write this episode this way today at all. The sort of casual acceptance of, like, but let's pass her nude photos around the office, like, just not going to happen. But they also had a shade anyway of empowerment where she got to decide, like, you know what, I'll decide whether I want to do this or not. It should be up to me.
Yeah, I think this would have come out like maybe 3 or 4 years after the Vanna White pictures. Like, she had done a nude pictorial when she was younger, and it was a bit of a controversy that Playboy was going to publish him, and what did that mean for Vanna White's career? And she weathered that storm pretty well. So there was a bit of echoes of that, which which may have felt progressive at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think both these episodes felt progressive at the time.
I'm in a place now. So this is the second time I've come on the show when you guys are covering Larry Sanders, and I've never seen the show. So I've seen the episodes I watched when I came on, and I've seen these two. Maybe it's because I'm not watching the show regularly, but I'm coming to the conclusion this one is not for me. Every episode just feels like what the beginnings of what became the anti-comedy movement in the 2000s, where it felt like a lot of shows, like something like this, though it's not well received now, but like things like Louie, where the joke was how not funny can the show be, and then that's funny. This feels like kind of that, where the show's not that funny, and every twist at the end of every episode is just the opposite of whatever was happening in the episode. So like the one before this that I also watched, Larry loses interest, is he wants to do a movie, he gets convinced not to do a movie, and then one audience member asks, "Why don't you do movies?" And then the end of the alcoholic episode is he just concedes to his alcoholic friend, and he just decides to like brush him off again.
I think the important thing to remember is this is back, 1990, 91?
93.
Yeah, this is back at a time when there were no peeks behind the curtain. There were no featurettes. There were no YouTube channels. Right. You never saw anybody preparing to go out and do it. There
were no DVD extras.
Right. This show is highly voyeuristic for what had for 4 decades beforehand been nothing but pure polish. Like it was sacrosanct that at 11 p.m. Eastern you got nothing but polish in late night television, and this sort of pulled back the kimono on all that. And I think absent, because you grew up in a time where there never was pure polish. There was always a bit of a peek behind the scenes.
Yeah. So it's like, I think you might be right on that for sure, that my context for the appreciation of the series is different. It's just, but even down to the writing side, I don't want to say Aaron Sorkin-esque, but I kind of wish I had a more, because I really don't, because I don't think that's really what I want. But I do think I want like a peek behind the curtain taken a tad more seriously, where it's like, how crazy is it to work the behind the scenes of a late night talk show? But there's still like cool, funny gags running throughout it, like that don't just feel like they were the first thing the writer came up with and then they were thrown out as the joke of the episode. I kind of wish it just dug a little deeper than it currently does.
Well, the pacing of this is very, very much 1993. You want Sports Night, which came out in 1998.
Kind of do, which is what's saying.
And blew everyone away because nothing had ever been seen like it before.
Yeah, You're not wrong. That, and I mean, I always thought about how what I wanted from the newsroom was not what they gave me, but rather I wish the newsroom had been covering like the Daily Show behind the scenes and give me that, but it's the newsroom, but in the Daily Show. You're not wrong, Tom. Like that is, the show's just not what I want it to be.
And the thing is, I don't think you get Sports Night without shows like Larry Sanders Show.
You're not also true.
Showing like, hey, we can do this concept, right?
As we wrap up, let me give one pitch to you, Meryl. That is a very, very good documentary from Judd Apatow, who studied under and worked with Gary Shandling, and worked on this show. I think he's the first credit on most episodes. The Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling is extraordinary, and I think really contextualizes, like he was on track to become Larry Sanders, but instead wanted to do a meta Larry Sanders, and I don't know. I think that shaped a lot of my appreciation for it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
All right, thank you, Meryl, for being with us. Remind people again where they can get the archives of Word Tetris.
Okay, you can go to Word Tetris, first on Twitter, twitter.com/MerylBarr, MERILLBARR. That's where you find out my writing stuff. WordTetris.com/archive. Word Tetris is over. My podcast about rewriting specifically. Lots of interviews, lots of names the first 2 episodes alone. John Rogers, who was the showrunner of King Killer and Leverage. Second episode, Sean Ryan, creator of The Shield. Like those are like top first 2 episodes of the series. You can get the whole archive for 25% off through February 3rd if you use the promo code CK at checkout. WordTetris.com/archive.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back again next time. Thanks for supporting us at patreon.com/cordkillers. We'll spoil you next time. Bye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.